يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا يا هلا يا هلا يا هلا يا هلا يا هلا يا
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk with me, Julie Ali. Saturday morning it is, and great to be with you. Please keep us company right up until 10. We have some amazing discussions that we're going to bring to you with some amazing guests as well. We're going to be looking at osteoporosis with the South African Foundation of Osteoporosis. We're also going to be looking at 3D printing in cement, of all things. But right now we're going to talk to an amazing young lady. Her name is Melissa Dolphin Rowland. She's British but loves being in South Africa, has been here for 10 years, and she is going to talk to us about the voice of a child during a separation or a divorce. So who exactly is she? Let's ask her what she studied for and why she's written this very important piece of paper, The Voice of the Child. Melissa, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Julie. Thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you here. I was very excited when my producer told me that we're going to talk to you, very especially about the voice of the child. But before we get there, tell us a little bit about you. I know you studied in the UK, but what did you study for?
Okay, so I actually studied in South Africa. So Yes, I've studied in South Africa. So I have an undergraduate and an honours in psychology through UNISA. And then currently I'm also conducting a master's full dissertation through UNISA on divorce mediation in South Africa, looking at the lived experiences of the parties that have successfully gone through the mediation process. So that's what I'm currently doing. And then in terms of my role as a mediator, so I have gone through specific training as a family and divorce mediator, which then allows me to become accredited with, I'm accredited with the South African Association of Mediators, which is a national association body for mediators in South Africa.
There's been a shift from litigation to mediation, and rightly so, I might add,
Yes.
rightly so. It's less painful, it's less
Hostile.
absolutely,
Yep.
and less costly, I should imagine.
Yes, less.
Why does it talk to you?
Why does it what, sorry?
Why does it mean so much
Why
to
does
you?
it mean so much to me? You know, yeah, I mean, people often ask me, Melissa, how did you, it's not like I grew up wanting to work with, you know, people going through such a traumatic time in terms of a divorce and separation. But going through the training and learning all the different aspects of how you can apply mediation to a family that's going through such a difficult time, emotionally, physically, and mentally, the mediation process just has so many benefits. And I think that if you can help a family, and specifically the children, just a small amount, with them not having to be put through a litigative process, I think that in itself is very rewarding. The work is difficult, but once you help and get parents to reach an agreement in terms of what they're going to do for their children and help them co-parent effectively moving forward, it feels good. And when they check back in with you months or a year down the line, which is generally what they do, and things are going well and their parenting plan is in place and the children are adapting, it's really good to know that you've actually helped that family.
How do we steer people in this direction? Because still, when you go to the family courts, there's still this lot of animosity between the couples, and don't talk about the negative impact on the children and obviously the support structures around this family, the in-laws and the outlaws, because they too are very pained by the separation or the divorce. The emphasis here with your work is really the voice of the child. And I think in the past, the voice of the child was never heard or totally forgotten. Let's talk about the importance of this paper that you've written.
Okay, so with regards to the voice of the child, so what the purpose of that is that when a parent is either going through a separation or a divorce, is that in order for them to be able to co-parent effectively, they need to know what's going on with their children, how they're feeling about what's happening with their parents. It's not a case of the parents just go away and put a plan together and not involve their children in some way or form. But what we have to be very mindful of is that we're not putting a child in the middle and making them make decisions about what's going to be happening with mum and dad at home. So this way, the voice of the child, that what happens is that they speak to either a qualified registered psychologist or a social worker. And it's what we call a voice of the child interview. And it's an interview with that independent professional where they get to sit and go through certain questions and projective tests, looking at how they're feeling emotionally with what's going on with mum and dad. So because of their profession, the psychologists and the social workers, they can probe in terms of getting them to draw, like the kinetic family drawings. They'll get them to finish sentences. They'll do play with apparatus in the interview. And through that interview, the therapist is able to ascertain as to how that child is feeling. And this can happen for a child from the age of 4 up until 17.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. So 17, obviously, because as of 18, a child is no longer
adult. Yes,
now an adult. So, but from the ages of 4, obviously that depends in terms of their emotional state and also their what shall I say, their developmental age. So if they are able to go into that voice of the child interview at the ages of 4, then we do conduct it. And we get a lot of information from those interviews as to how they're feeling.
What do you do with all of that information? So let's assume that a particular child is not coping well at all as far as the separation or divorce is concerned. It's going to impact on the child's health and well-being.
Yes.
If the child's at school, it's going to impact on his or her schoolwork as well.
Yes, correct.
What happens with this information? Are you going to share it with the parents and guide them as to how they interact with the child going forward?
Yep. So with the mediation process, that's one of the huge benefits, is that it's very holistic. So my role as the mediator and the therapist that we have involved, what happens after the voice of the child is that a feedback report is drafted, and both the parents and myself will sit with the therapist and go through the report. So the therapist will report back in terms of what tests they used, what was observed in their child, and what recommendations they could make. So for your example, if there is a child that is really struggling with mum and dad, then we look at tools and ways that we can empower mum and dad to help them deal with their child, which in turn then their child benefits from. We also, the therapist will also look at engaging in some maybe short-term play therapy. Maybe they need a safe space to be able to go and speak to somebody that's totally neutral and objective, because often children during a divorce feel quite stuck between mum and dad. They don't want to upset either one of them, but they're torn. And so having this safe space with a therapist is really important, that they get to then talk about their emotions and how they can deal with them, and also how they can then speak to mum and dad about certain things.
How does mum and dad prepare this little child to go in for this therapy session, the voice of the child? I'm asking this on the premise that already the child is aware that mum and dad have been having furious fights. They're going through a divorce or they're going through a separation. Where are they taking me? Who is the stranger
Yeah.
that I'm having to interact with?
Yeah.
How do you prepare the child? Because it must be so overwhelming for him or her as it is.
It is, and it's a question that I'm often asked when I first meet with the parents. And it's a matter of, it's always very important to have clear lines of communication open with parents and the children. So it's got to be done in an age-appropriate way. What works for a 4-year-old is going to be different for what we say for a 12-year-old. But it's very important that the parents, both of them, so even though that they are going through a separation of divorce, it's always very important that mum and dad are there still as mum and dad for that child, and not one of them must take on the role of now telling the child that, okay, this is what we're going to do. Because it's really important that the child gets to see that mum and dad are still parenting together and communicating with them with regards to this. So they can tell them in an age-appropriate way, okay, we're taking you to see a therapist, a lady. She's going to be asking you some questions about what's going on at home and how you're feeling. And they don't go into too much detail because the therapist they're so good at their work. They specialize in working with children, that the children come in, it's normally a room full of toys and which lowers their anxiety, and they start playing with the toys and so forth, and then the therapist takes control and guides the child through the process. So the info that the parents give the child is minimal, but it's enough to let them know that this is what's happening, but not to scare them.
Okay, let's go for our first ad break. Melissa Dolphin Rowland is my first guest. We're talking about the voice of the child in the case of a separation or a divorce happening in that family. The voice of the child needs to be heard, and obviously plans need to be put in place so that that child is not damaged in the process of the separation or this divorce. We're still going to talk some more about it right after the ad break. We're talking about the voice of the child in cases of separation or divorce, and we're talking obviously mediation in this respect. Melissa Dolphin Rowland is in a studio talking about mediation and the importance of making certain that your child goes through this process. What about parents who neglect having a mediator come in and talk with a child, a therapist and a mediator? What happens to that family unit? What happens to that child? How much of damage are we talking here?
Oh, it's a difficult question to answer when there is a family that hasn't sought that help in terms of the voice of the child and the mediation process. And you can never know how much damage we could be doing to our children if we're not seeking out the right assistance. And that's why creating the awareness around the voice of the child and using the mediation process during a separation or divorce is just so important.
But that being said, Melissa, obviously you're going to get lots of couples who separate or divorce.
Yes.
That will just go whatever route is quickest, easiest for them.
They will.
Less painful financially and otherwise, and cut out all of these processes. They won't even think about mediation. They just want to get it over and done with. And I think children are not even top of their minds.
No, unfortunately not. Sometimes because of their heightened state of their emotions during this really traumatic time, they they might just go it alone, go to the court. Look, we have a family advocate's office in place in our family courts. So there is some kind of streamlining in terms of assistance where a family advocate will be going with the parents and looking through a parenting plan, if that's what they do. But it's not set in stone. It's not a must. And I think that's the importance around creating the awareness about how we can protect our children during separation and divorces, and how parents can, give their children a very strong foundation to move forward during such a difficult time, that then they can co-parent effectively and minimizing the impact on their children.
When we look at the Voice of the Child paper that you've written, how does it compare with the Children's Act?
So with regards to the Voice of the Child and the Children's Act, it's not...
Because this is really about the protection of the children. They're vulnerable.
It is.
And somebody needs to look out that those children are truly protected.
Yeah. So the Children's Act does pertain to the children and how we protect them in terms of parental rights and responsibilities and guardianship. When it comes to the Voice of the Child, it's not law. It's not, you don't have to, as a parent, you are not required by law to have a Voice of the Child interview conducted. However, it is highly recommended. And the thing is that often parents, not all parents even put together parenting plans, because some parents, they split up, they get a divorce, it's very amicable, they go through the processes like you say, and then it's done. But later down the line, there may be issues that arise with them as co-parenting, or with their child that's now struggling with their parent separation. Then later on, so it's not too late, a child can still go through a Voice of the Child interview post-separation and divorce. If mum and dad think, this is not right, we need to help now our child, what can we do? Then there is a way post-separation and divorce to still support their children.
So what you're really saying is, mom and dad, please put your issues aside, put your children first, work on a parenting plan, and I want you to outline that as well. Yeah. And, think about the child. So you've got your paper, which is called Voice of the Child, and you have a parenting plan. Two separate pieces of paper. Yep. How do you merge them, and how do you get the best outcomes for the entire family?
Yep. So with the feedback from the Voice of the Child, we then take that to the mediation session to now go through the parenting plan. So a parenting plan is a formal document that can be taken to the Family Advocate office and registered with the Family Advocate, and you actually register it. Yes. Wow. But you can go one step further and have it made an order of the court. So then it has legal recourse.
Is that a good idea? Sorry for the interruption. Simply because let's assume this is a pretty amicable divorce. And for you, and I'm sure you're protecting your own rights and the rights of your children, you decide you want to make it an order of the court. Are you not going to just aggravate the situation with your partner?
No, it's not a litigious move. It's merely something that I recommend to all my clients that they do, because yes, right now things are going okay and all's good, but who knows later down the line if something, you could have a bigger disagreement about something. Rather have it formal and in the court, so that then you can go back, and they're flexible. A parenting plan is flexible, it's not set in stone. So you can go back at any time and amend it, and it's not a costly affair to go and have your parenting plan. You can go to the court yourself and ask for the Family Advocate to endorse it, and then request that it becomes an order of the court. So it's not a lengthy or costly process, and it's something that I recommend that parents do. Do
you find that more and more parents are going the mediation route? And if so, why?
I do find they are. It's slowly gaining momentum. I think that we as South Africa, we have a lot of work to do still in terms of raising the awareness around the benefits of mediation, because it's still relatively new. Even though mediation is not a new concept, in the family aspect it is relatively new. And it's gaining momentum because I think the impact that it has on the family as a whole, as the parents and as the children, is positive. It's less emotionally draining. It helps to deal with all those uncertainties, and because it's less emotionally draining, the time around it, that in terms of the time frames. When you go to litigation, it can become a very lengthy process. Mediation is very streamlined. And it's a quick process, but guided by the parents. The parents are in control all the time of the process. And so which alleviates the emotions that are going on. It doesn't make them go away. I mean, it's a divorce or separation, but it does help to alleviate those emotions that are going on, which in turn really does have a more positive impact on the children.
So if I want to separate from my partner, I don't want to go the litigation route because, as you've just pointed out, lengthy, it can be very emotionally draining, and I've decided I want to do it I want to be civilized about this separation. How do I then engage with the mediator, or if I go to the court, the family court, how do I then suggest to them I want to go the mediation route and not the litigation route?
So for the first part, if you want to go the mediation route, I strongly recommend that people go through to the association. So in South Africa, we have different associations where accredited mediators are accredited. So you have the South African Association of Mediators, there's FAMAC, which is based down in Cape Town, and there's CAMAF, which is in Durban, in KZN. So I strongly recommend that people use the associations. They have people listed as what their special areas of expertise are, and that way you can ensure that you've got an accredited family and divorce mediator. And otherwise, you can go through to the court yourself. There they have the Family Advocate's Office, and they have mediators there that can assist.
Now, the moment we talk family court, you think of this horrible, long, drawn-out process. You think about the red tape, and it's so off-putting. What do you say to that?
The family court is overwhelmed. They have a huge amount of work.
Overburdened.
Overburdened and overwhelmed with all the work that they have.
Yeah.
And and they also are behind the process of mediation. And if people aren't able to get in line and be waiting for however long, because the court roll is long, then they can approach the mediators in their private capacity. But the Family Advocate's Office is doing a wonderful job for the parents. But there is the support in terms of going to private mediators to go through the process themselves.
And you have outlined the fact that it's not as expensive as litigation.
It's certainly not.
So you go to a private mediator, and in a short space of time, the matter gets wrapped up, together with a parenting plan, together with the voice of the child, and anything else. I should imagine it's a very fluid document. You can obviously add or delete things that doesn't talk to you from the document.
That's the beauty of the mediation process, is that it can be very unique, and it looks at every family's details in their circumstances. It's no one size fits all. I often hear parents come to me and say, oh, but my friend's doing this, or my family member did that. But it doesn't mean that what works for one works for another. You have to take your family's unique set of circumstances and work a plan that's going to work specifically for them.
Okay, we've almost come to the end of the interview. Final question, what about your support structures? What about parents and parents-in-law? Do they have a role to play as far as the parenting responsibilities and the voice of the child is concerned? Or do they just remain where they are in a support capacity?
Extended family members do have a role in terms of a separation or divorce. It's up to them how much they get involved, depending on the relationship that they've got with the parents and the child. But it's very important. I'm always encouraging that parents must keep fostering those relationships with the children and their extended family members. Just because mum and dad have got divorced and are now separated, we need to limit the amount of other changes that are happening in that child's life. So if there's grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, the more people that there are in terms of the support structure for the family as a whole, the better.
How do people get hold of you?
Hold of me. I'm on the internet. I have a website. My company is called Amani Mediation. I'm based in Rivonia, Santon. My contact details are on there. My email address and cell phone number.
That's fine. That's perfect. And please continue touching lives in a positive way.
Thank you,
you know, we don't want all of these people being angry at each other. If they separate, then let them separate in peace, in respect, and with dignity.
Yes.
A separation or divorce. And with the mediation route, like you and colleagues like yourself, obviously are doing the right thing. So thank you so much for talking to us and bringing this to our attention.
Thank you, Julie.
And there you have it, Melissa Dolphin Rowland talking to us about the mediation route, the parenting plan, which is crucial in a separation or a divorce, and more importantly, the voice of the child, the interview with the child, to hear the child's needs and to put support structures in place so that that child's world is not turned upside down in a situation of a separation or divorce. Don't go away. We're going to come back and talk to you about 3D printing in cement. So from family matters, parenting plans and the voice of the child, we move into the fourth industrial revolution. It's here, it's now, we need to embrace it. And we have two people in studio with us. They're partners, CEO of 3D Print Crete, Refilwe Lediga, and Ibrahim Akub, the technical director of the same company. They're here to talk to us about 3D printing in cement. And what next, you might ask? Well, they're going to answer all of that. Assalamu alaikum and good morning. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I'm blown away. I mean, I've heard of 3D printing as far as dental work is concerned and a whole host of other stuff. It's the first time I've heard about 3D printing in cement. Now, we have a contraption here. We're going to talk about it in a little while. But let's understand why and how you guys decided that this space needed to be filled. I'll start with you as the technical director.
Well, from our perspective, 3D printing is not a new technology. It's been around for quite a while. And there are other mediums that have been done, plastic and those sort of things. But we've decided that to push this into the civil arena as well. So we've now looked at the building of obviously houses and other objects and things that could basically make much better housing or more futuristic looking housing, for example. So that was the direction we looked at from day one. And yeah, I think my first thing was I built an actual plastic printer myself. So I understood the technology, I understood exactly how to do these things. And from that point of view, we then embarked onto this journey of ours, which obviously has taken us a long time. We do have some stuff that we've built already. We've created the machine. It works on a rail system, and that gives us a lot of advantages to be able to mass produce items going forward.
Okay. What's your background?
I've got a control automation and basically an electronic engineering light current background, which allows me to, in terms of development of the control technology for these aspects, to be able to put it together, yeah.
Refilwe, how did this partnership come about?
So my background is in civil engineering and construction, right? And while I was spending time on site and building structures, I just thought that there should be a more efficient way to put up structures, So doing my research, I came across a technology called 3D printing technology, and people are using it to build small objects and that sort of stuff. And I thought about the applications we can use for construction. So I did a bit of my research, then enrolled in a master's program on how we can 3D print concrete. So essentially understanding the mix design that we can use. Then a couple of months later, I met with Ibrahim, and he's obviously his influence was with his mechanical design and electronics, and we thought that we merge and solve this problem or find a way to really find an efficient way of putting up structures. And yeah, 5 years in, we've come this far. We've won competitions, and really now working hard to find market.
Okay, so you gave up your day jobs, you're following your dream as far as 3D is concerned, 3D in cement. You mentioned something about construction, you also mentioned housing. Does this then suggest that the future, as we perhaps envisage in 5 or 10 years' time, this is the way houses and other constructions, buildings perhaps, will be built? And how does that then minimize on costs, floor space, staff members? Are you cutting down on all of that?
Okay, I'll get the first part of that question. So history has shown that the market will always adopt a technology that increases efficiency and reduces costs significantly. And this is what we believe 3D concrete printing can do. Just to give you a bit of background, how structures come up is that we use what we call formwork or shutters, right? These are like molds. Then we pour concrete in the molds, and when it hardens, you remove the molds. And that's how we build structures in construction. So the molds are expensive and require a crane to move them around, which is a very expensive exercise. But with 3D printing, we don't need any of that. So we significantly reduce the cost with regards to eliminating the cranes and the formwork. And obviously, we don't require as much labor in this process as well.
Okay, so the unions are going to be out in full force when they hear you're not going to be needing human resources, so to speak. You're not going to need labor. How do you reassure them that jobs are not going to be lost? I know, Ibrahim, you're probably going to say we'll reinvent other jobs. So what are those other jobs all about?
Well, I think maybe before we continue, this object that we've printed, we made an exact mix, and every amount of that was used to make this actual product. So wastage is very minimal, if any. And then to actually get to the point, second point, which is how we're going to not lose the jobs. I mean, I always go back to the fact that if you think about the mail delivery system, in the olden days you used horseback riding to take mail from one point to the other.
Right.
And that has disappeared. But what has happened after that? We created a new avenue of jobs. You've got to the email, you've still got the postal service, you've got all these aspects of it. So we will create jobs in a new avenue. The younger generation are very techno savvy, and we would be able to probably print this house by selecting it from a few designs that you want, and say, okay, I want this, select it, and that machine will start printing. But you still need about 3 to 4 people to still operate this machine, very technologically advanced people that will learn this technology and take it forward. And you know what, we will deliver much more housing faster, or much more objects and items that you would need faster with this sort of technology. So you are creating more jobs indirectly.
Durability. I think the one thing that pops into my head is, your traditional bricks and mortar house is solid, it's on a foundation, etc. How different is the 3D house going to look like, and how solid is that structure going to be?
So with construction standards, and let me take a brick, for example, we use what we call compressive strength and tensile strength, right, to measure how long it will stay up. So a brick has around 20 MPa, it's a force, it's pressure rather, and we've managed to hit around 35 MPa.
Which is even stronger.
Which is even stronger.
Wow.
With that, The other technical issues, obviously, that we can solve, but that's just an indication of how we've managed to overcome such challenges with strength and that sort of stuff.
Okay, what do we have here in front of me? When you walked in, I said it was very fancy, a vase or a flower pot. What exactly is it?
Well, this was just an object that we decided to
anything
print.
you want it to be.
So because it showed the flexibility,
Okay.
we're able to then print anything. I mean, if you think of, you'd even be able to print your furniture inside the house when you're building the house.
Right.
Some of the furniture, for example, tabletops, some stools, it could be a flower pot, or even a tank outside the house to store water, which would be part of the same system. So there's a lot of flexibility that it gives you to be able to do things. And yeah, I mean, we're just showing the capability of the machine in terms of structural flexibility.
Tell us, what has this been? What are the materials that you've used in the structure, and how long it actually took you to produce?
Yeah, so we had to design the mix. This is not standard, and that's where I guess our patent lies, right? So we used cement, we used fly ash, we used silica fume, and we also used a bit of fiber to put it together. So it's a mix that we're in the process of patenting. And the reason why it's so complex is that if you think about it, when you extrude it, it must be very soft and very sort of like liquid. But the moment you get to the next layer, the bottom layer should be able to have enough strength to carry the upcoming layers. So yeah, in a nutshell, those are the material, the ingredients we use to achieve this.
Okay, and you also talked patent. You're going to patent this product. Obviously, there's other bright minds out in the market who's probably on your wavelength as well, and are probably also thinking about the same thing or in the same space that you're at. How does your patent then protect you going forward? They may come up with something similar.
Yeah, so patents last for around 5 to 10 years, right? And we're one of the first people, actually we're the only people that are aggressively pursuing it commercially.
In South Africa?
In South Africa. So new entrants who want to achieve the building standards would have to somehow license our technology, something like that. So I think that's a competitive advantage for now, and we'll, hopefully we'll success in that strategy.
Okay, let's go for an ad break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how you take your product to the market. How do you sell this concept to construction companies, people building houses and buildings and so forth? But all of that right after the ad break. Interesting, isn't it? The mind boggles when you think where technology is taking us. Don't go away. We're going to talk some more to these amazing men with the most amazing minds and 3D technology. Ibrahim Akub and Rifilwe Lediga is in studio talking about 3D printing in cement. And like they've said to me off air, this is the industrial revolution. Embrace it, or just be left behind. So this is what they've printed, just one of the many things that they've printed, but they do say it's possible to obviously build structures through 3D printing in cement. If I came to you guys and commissioned you to build me a house, what's the process? Do I have to go to my architect first before with a drawing and then come to you?
Yeah, so essentially the process doesn't change much. It's just the method we do it with that changes. So you still have to go to an architect and they'll give you a design, and then we'll get those designs from the architect, convert the files that they have to the format that we can use for 3D printing, set up the machine on site, and then the machine will print the structure.
Okay, are we talking entire structure? Are we talking windows, doors, the entire flooring, roof, everything via 3D printing in cement? Or are there certain elements of the structure that would have to be done the traditional way?
Yeah, look, you cannot do everything with the 3D printer, obviously. The windows, we would probably still have to use support structures at certain points. When it reaches at that point, we would place in a structure. There will still be a physical intervention to do that, and then we'd continue printing on that level to where the access way for the window would be or the door would be, for example. And then you'd still put in a standard door, standard window accordingly for that sort of areas. And then also for your roofing, you'd still go with a standard roofing if you want to, or if you want to put place a structure over it, you could print over the top as well if needed to go upper levels.
Okay, so as we're speaking, no doubt there's other bright minds like yourselves out there thinking, hey, I could fill that space. I could then come up with some form of a prototype. I could come up with 3D printing in glass perhaps, or 3D printing in doing doorways, etc. So the market is wide open at this point in time. And there's amazing opportunities from what I'm hearing you guys saying. That being said, what is the advantage to me going your route as opposed to the traditional route in building my structure, be it a house, a warehouse, a 6-story building, etc.? What would the advantages be to me?
So there are two main ones that we stick on. It's the cost. It won't be as expensive as the traditional method.
Okay, yeah. So what percentage are we looking at here?
So during our desktop study, we can reduce cost by around 30 to 40%. So it's quite significant in such projects. Number one. Number two, the machine does not sleep. The machine works when the lights are off. The machine doesn't have a union or anything. So with that advantage, we can significantly reduce the time the project takes.
Just explain, what are you saying? The machine doesn't sleep, and if you have a power outage, it doesn't impact on the machine. How does it then generate power to create these, the cement blocks, etc.? Yeah,
no. What I meant was that so at night it could
continues working. Okay, okay. And, so you're not dependent on a very big labor force.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. It can work overnight, and yes. So there's a cost-cutting advantage and a time-saving advantage too, which we believe that it's a strong enough value proposition for potential clients.
Is the South African market ready for this? I'm thinking huge construction companies, building houses all over, building big buildings, construction sites, etc. Are they ready for it? Are they going to embrace it? How long is it going to take before you can break through that resistance? Because I'm sure there's going to be resistance.
Look, I'm going to give you my personal opinion. In my opinion, there is a market for it. It's just a lot of mindset change that still has to happen, and that is the biggest problem at this point in time. There are other companies that are busy doing similar things in China, in the US, and I think if you look at Dubai and you look at Saudi Arabia, they've already given some of these companies the go-ahead to start constructing houses and other aspects for them with 3D printing technology. So, in fact, Dubai has, I think, legislated it. About 2.5% of all buildings must have that 3D printing component within it. So, going forward, the technology is going to take. It's just, are we willing to embrace it and create the jobs with it, or be left behind?
Okay. So you guys are at the cutting edge as we speak. You wanted to add something to that?
I just want to add something too. Unfortunately, because it's a bit ahead, is that we have to focus on the machine and making it work, but we also have to focus on legislature too. There are general building standards that contractors need to adhere to. So we're putting in submissions for this to be a standard in building construction, and also in the process of that too.
So lots of red tape still to go through. It might take quite a while before you can take your first product, your first home to the market, so to speak. Are you excited about that?
No, definitely.
What are the plans you have going forward in terms of your first big venture, your first big assignment? You must have given it some thought.
Yeah, so we're going to start with a full-scale house. That it's a project that we're taking on. So it's just to maybe give context and to show people that we actually can do it. Obviously stepping it up from what we've been printing. So we're gonna print a fully blown low-cost house with furniture as a way of showing people that we can do it. And hopefully that will give us enough momentum to to get to where we want to go.
So is it in the construction phases already, and where are you going to showcase it?
We are busy in negotiation with a company that we are looking at possibly at somewhere near Midrand that we want to do this. So we're not 100% identified in terms of location yet, but yeah, we're close. But we've identified the aim, the target, what we're going to do. We just need the support out there for people to help us to get to that point. It's just a bit difficult with that part of it, yes, at the moment, yeah.
So that's one of your major challenges.
Yes.
What are the other challenges that you're having to overcome as far as people recognizing the value you're bringing to South Africa? What are the other challenges that you're looking at?
Look, it's also a political thing, right? The perception is that we're gonna somehow take away jobs, and if we put this on site, people are gonna throw you stones, and we're taking their jobs and that sort of stuff. But we believe that if you keep pushing and printing these houses in a safe environment and getting as much media attention, the politicians will catch up and see that we're actually pushing the country forward and helping us think about what the future of construction is.
Mm-hmm. Any other challenges that you'd like to get out the way now?
And maybe just adding on to his point, I think a while back it was, I think, at the Mbeki Foundation that Professor Marwala mentioned that, if you look at with the first industrial revolution, when these machines were made and people went and tried to break down these machines because they said this is going to take away jobs. But if you look at it today, did it stop that industrial revolution? It didn't. So in terms of that, I mean, that's why I say we always got to embrace and move ahead with the technology instead of trying to stop it and help it to get further to the point. Obviously, if the technology is good for us, let's take it forward. That's my opinion.
You both spoke about Dubai and China, where this is happening as we speak. Have you personally visited those sites and had a look at what it looks like and how durable it is?
The other country we didn't mention was the Netherlands. Fortunately, we've got an opportunity to go there, and they're putting a lot of investment in this technology. So with what we saw, it's durable, it meets the standard, and there's no reason why somebody wouldn't stay in it.
For now, you haven't got any product to go to market, if that's the way I can actually put it. So how are you making yourselves visible in the marketplace for people to sit up and take notice that there's something new, something innovative, something exciting that's happening here in South Africa? What is it that you do to make your presence felt?
So we've partnered with the South African Institute of Civil Engineers. So what's going to start happening going forward is that we're going to have short courses on 3D concrete printing and teach people about the technicalities, and also look at the business viability. So that's one of the aspects or the platforms we're using to take it out there.
And if you have the South African, did you say engineers?
Institute of Civil Engineers, yeah.
If you have them behind you, then I think half your battle's won, isn't it? Definitely. And the fact that you're taking it to schools and to varsities, that means obviously you're creating jobs. You're going to be creating jobs.
Exactly.
Okay. Anything you'd like to say to us in closing, apart from the fact that I'm going to commission you guys to build my dream home?
Yeah, no, I like to say, look, it took us 5 years to get there. It's been an uphill battle, right? And we're moving strides, we're improving the technology, the machine, we're making improvements in the concrete mix design. And if there's anybody out there who's interested in collaborating with us, please contact us at www.3d. I mean, our website is www.3dprintkit.co.za, and let's find a way to collaborate and really push this forward and prepare South Africa for the fourth industrial revolution.
Okay, this idea has been 5 years in the making. I don't necessarily mean the structure here, but I mean in totality. Yeah. Was there ever a point where you felt very dejected and felt that this ain't going to work, that you want to walk away from it? Or do you truly believe in it with all of your heart?
Look, I'm not going to deny that. We have reached points in the situation when something didn't work or we couldn't come right with something. It's been a lot of blood, sweat and tears. I must tell you, we've been through a lot. And there are points where, you feel like you want to just throw in the towel and give up. But something in the back of your mind keeps on saying, let's keep on going with this. It's your time, it's your effort, and then nothing's coming out of it. There's no money generated from it at this point in time. So I think Rafiela will vouch with me. There are points in time that,
you wanted to throw in the towel. Yeah. But you have won lots of competitions, and that's recognition enough for you for now.
Sure, yes. Definitely.
So don't give up your dreams, as I said. Don't give
Absolutely. Listen, guys, I think this is very exciting. I commend you for your genius as far as this is concerned. And you're right, don't give up. This is the future. The future is happening right now. And follow your dream. And we're going to be watching you guys pretty closely.
Thank you.
So when you win all those big prizes and when your first product goes to market, let ITV be the first to cover it. Definitely. Thank you indeed for being with us. Much success going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And there you have it. That's the future. Believe it or not, it's happening. It's happening around the world. And these gentlemen have brought it onto our doorstep. So watch the space. And welcome back. We are now going to be talking the silent disease. The silent disease is osteoporosis, and it is said that in South Africa, 1 in every 3 women and 1 in every 5 men present with this condition, which may not necessarily be a life-threatening disease, but it is a crippling disease indeed, and it's called the silent disease. In studio, we have Teresa Hoch. She is the CEO of the National Osteoporosis Foundation of South Africa. The head office is based in Cape Town, and she's come all the way here to Johannesburg to talk to us about the silent disease, which is very, very important that we learn as much as we possibly can about it. We do not want to become a statistic. Teresa, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you, Julie.
Now, you come from a medical background. You were a nursing sister for many, many years.
Yes.
And then you decided that you want to start up the Osteoporosis Foundation. Why?
35 years ago, when I started working in the hospital ward where we treated osteoporosis patients, or where we received them, there was really nothing that we could do to help them. They would sneeze and fracture 2 ribs. They would turn around in bed and fracture a rib. The husband would help his wife with groceries and pick up a bag and fracture a vertebra. So we knew then that it was such an important disease, and it's not called the silent disease for nothing, because it can go on for many years and you won't know that your bones are becoming thinner. It's almost like having a high cholesterol, and the first sign and symptom is a heart attack. And with osteoporosis, that's with a fracture. But 35 years ago, we really didn't have anything to diagnose it with. We just knew that this was a disease, not a normal part of aging, because that is a total myth. But at that stage, everyone believed that this was just people who was old. They were old and they had to become bent over and break their hips, and that was just normal. And then research obviously showed that this is a systemic disease that causes your bones to become brittle, and obviously brittle bones are more prone to fractures. So that's why we started the foundation, and it's a dual foundation because we know that doctors need as much education about osteoporosis as patients and the lay public do.
Okay, you've alluded to osteoporosis, meaning that your bones are thinning or they're brittle, etc. What exactly is osteoporosis?
Okay.
And how does it present? We know it's the silent disease. You may never know that you're suffering from the condition till you fracture a bone and land up in hospital, and then it is found that you're suffering from the condition. But what exactly is it?
Osteo is the Greek word for bone, porosis meaning porous bones. So where your bones are supposed to look like more like like a cheddar cheese, it starts looking like a Swiss cheese with big holes, and it becomes lacy. It has a lacy structure. And it's almost like having a building, a house, and you're not maintaining it and it's crumbling. And that's exactly what happens with your skeleton if you don't maintain your bone density or look after your bones. So it's just porous bones making you more susceptible to fractures of the forearm, the hip, which is the most serious consequence of osteoporosis, and obviously the spine. And that's where the bent over spine comes, and older people with hunchbacks.
Now, you indicated that people in the past assumed that osteoporosis is old people's disease, but you also went on to say that that is not necessarily true. So what is going wrong, or what has gone wrong that it starts presenting later in life?
I think one of the major risk factors is still older age. But we also know that people are becoming older. We don't die off at 50 and 60 anymore like a century ago. We're becoming older and older. So age...
Our lifespans have increased.
So age still remains a very important risk factor. But there's a myriad of other risk factors that can lead to osteoporosis. It doesn't only attack older people. Risk factors can attack, well, you have risk factors in kids. We know we have children with osteoporosis, younger people.
Why does that happen? Is there a genetic link there? Because perhaps parents or grandparents presented with the condition, or is it lifestyle and diet?
No, the risk factors are, they're numerous, including lifestyle. Genetics play an extremely important part, yes. But children have other risk factors like medications and stuff, and we can get to the risk factors a little later on. But yes, if you've chosen your parents badly, it might lead to osteoporosis in you. And so if your grandparents or siblings or mother and father had fractures of any sort, and we call them fragility fractures, meaning that you fracture after minimal trauma. So you probably had osteoporosis, and 30 and 50 years ago, they didn't necessarily know it was due to osteoporosis. But yes, genetics do play a big part. More so later on, it's more lifestyle, because you build bone until a certain age.
Around about 30s, am I right?
Yes, 25 to 30. And after that, everyone's bone density starts declining. It's a normal process of aging.
Can young people watching us this morning and know that they do have a family history of osteoporosis and decide that's not the route they want to go, can they start making the right choices as far as the condition is concerned, so that when they reach the age of 60 or 70, they are not beset with the silent disease?
Yes, and I think, as for most chronic diseases, lifestyle is important. Bone is a living tissue. It dies the day you die. So you need to start putting bone in your bone bank from birth until you die. So lifestyle is extremely important, even for kids. Teenage is probably the most important age group, because that's where they have growth spurts and where they really have to make a lot of bone, so that they have enough bone in their bone bank when they start losing it after the age of 25 to 30.
What else ought you be doing to promote healthy bone growth and healthy, strong bones? Now, I'm thinking diet, lifestyle, etc. But what else? And is it true, is it a fact or a myth that, especially women, that the moment they start menstruating, they should be topping up with calcium supplements?
I think menstruating is probably because then they're in their teens, and that's where the growth spurt occurs. The highest calcium intake, because we recommend obviously a minimum amount of 1,000 milligrams a day. Teenagers need about 1,300 milligrams a day. So it doesn't have to do with them menstruating. It has to do with the hormones and the growth spurts. Calcium, obviously, after the menopause. Vitamin D, we can talk about that later on. But all those, lifestyle remains important. So calcium, vitamin D, exercise, extremely important, because you know and I know kids love their computers. They sit in front of a TV. So exercise is the only physiological way where you can stimulate bone formation. So very important in the teens, even in young kids. And you know, kids start smoking and drinking at school. So those are two no-nos.
How does smoking and drinking impact on bone growth and bone health?
Okay, smoking, especially in women, but I think in men too. We have estrogen that protects our bones. Men have testosterone that protect their bones. Smoking suppresses the formulation or the formation of those hormones, so you're losing the bone protection. So it's also bad for the osteoblasts, the bone building cells. So it's directly bone toxic. Alcohol is extremely toxic to bones, and if you think teenagers, when they still need to be looking after their bones extremely well, they drink alcohol, which is directly toxic to the bones. It makes you lose calcium in the urine, so it doesn't go and sit in the bones, so you get porous bones. So you really not looking after yourself if you start doing those things at an early age, and it remains bad. We recommend that you don't drink more than 1 to 2 alcoholic drinks per day, preferably less than 1 or 7 a week, because it really, and especially in women, is bone toxic.
Mm-hmm. Smoking too is really very bad.
Yeah, it's bad for everything.
What about, let's assume you have really follow a really good diet and you do exercise regularly. Is it still important to supplement with calcium and vitamin D?
We prefer that you obviously take calcium in the form of your diet. We also know that no one globally gets to the 1,000 milligrams a day in their diet. We aim to do that. And we recommend dairy to be the cheapest, best way to get your calcium. So, and that equates to 3 dairy portions per day, or 3 glasses of milk a day. So if you can get that in your diet, you don't need a supplement, because everyone wants to do it more naturally. Vitamin D, the other more important thing because you need that for calcium absorption. We sit in offices from 8 to 5. We don't get in the sun. And as you know, the sun is the biggest provider of vitamin D, because it needs to go through the skin.
And we're so blessed here in South Africa of having sunshine all of the time.
Unless you stay in Cape Town.
Let's go for an ad break. I'm talking to Teresa Hoch. She's from the Osteoporosis Foundation in South Africa. They're an advocacy group. They make sure that we get all the information we need to know about this silent disease. Don't go away. We're coming back and we're going to be talking about supplements. We're going to be talking about treatment options, side effects, and everything else you need to know about osteoporosis. We're talking about the silent disease, osteoporosis, with the CEO of the Osteoporosis Foundation of South Africa, and we're going to now look at some myths, some facts, treatment options, and is the condition reversible? Teresa, let's start with the last question first. Let's assume you're a 60-year-old person and you've been diagnosed with osteoporosis at that late stage of your life. Is it at all possible to reverse the condition or arrest the condition?
When you're 60 and you haven't looked after your bones and you have osteoporosis, and I'm not saying everyone did not look after their bones and get osteoporosis, but let's assume you have osteoporosis, severe osteoporosis, you're never going to get back the bone that you had when you were 30 years old.
Sure.
But with the correct treatment and with correct lifestyle, we can arrest the bone loss. And if you need treatment, active bone treatment for your bones, we can actually prevent up to 70% of future fractures. So yes, we can stop the disease and we can make the remaining bones stronger. We can never put back all the bone that you've lost.
Is it true that people who suffer hip fractures through osteoporosis, of course, that, well, most people or a certain percentage of those people after a hip fracture would probably die due to that, due to osteoporosis within a year or two?
Okay, that sounds very gloomy, doesn't it?
It does. But let's put out the facts out there.
Up to almost a third of people will die within that first year after having had a hip fracture. Not due to the osteoporosis, not due to the osteoporosis, but due to the complications either after the operation or having been in bed for long, so they get pulmonary emboli. We also know that more men will die after having had a hip fracture because of their comorbid diseases like heart disease and all the other things, because they generally have more other illnesses as well.
Right.
But up to a third of patients die within that first year. The other scary fact is that more than a half of the rest will never function independently again. They will have to be institutionalized. So those are the scary facts, and I can bore you for days talking about osteoporosis and why we need to make as much noise about this very silent disease as we can.
Earlier on, you spoke about osteoporosis in children. Why do children present with osteoporosis? Here I'm thinking that older people would present with the disease simply because of poor lifestyle choices early on in their lives. But young children presenting with the disease, why does it beset them?
Okay, we haven't really talked about the risk factors for osteoporosis. One of those risk factors is cortisone use. And I'm not saying stop using cortisone because it's for various other amount of diseases, it's a good thing. But just know that cortisone makes you lose calcium in the urine, and various other things. It's not very good for the osteoblasts, the bone building cells. Malignancies, most malignancies, cancers, cause osteoporosis. If you have diabetes, type 1 and type 2, it can lead to osteoporosis. Malabsorption, and we know in Africa and South Africa we do have malabsorption and malnutrition. It can cause osteoporosis. In teenagers, they want to be thin. So the anorexia patients, they stop eating fatty things that they consider fatty, like dairy products, and that can lead to osteoporosis. And all these things catch up with you much later, or not even that later on in life. But we know that there's a certain amount of children that can get osteoporosis, and all these things that I mentioned now, the risk factors, the diseases, chronic diseases, most of them can cause osteoporosis.
Let's look at the more positive side as far as osteoporosis is concerned. Let's talk about treatment options. Do they work? What are the best options? And I know not one size fits all, so different things would work for different people. But what sort of treatment options are out there? And I think we've come a long way from the time there was nothing to treat osteoporosis patients with. So what is currently available, and what's the good news around the availability of a treatment?
I think the good news is that we probably have most of the treatment options available in South Africa. Of those things, and I'm going to start it with the postmenopausal women. So HRT, hormone replacement therapy, still remains the cheapest, best way to prevent postmenopausal osteoporosis, because you can lose up to 10% of your bone within that 5 years following the menopause if it's not treated. Having said that, HRT is not
Side effects.
suitable for everyone. People are moving away from hormones, not because their doctor said so, but because they don't want to take hormones. So obviously, it's a contentious subject, and I don't think we need to discuss that now. But hormone replacement therapy still remains the best way to prevent postmenopausal osteoporosis. Then there are drugs we call the bisphosphonates. They go specifically and target the bone chewing cell. You know, you've got bone building cells, that the osteoblasts that build bone, and you've got osteoclasts, the chewing cells that chew away old bone. So if you have a bone surface like that, the osteoclast erodes a hole in there, chewing away the old bone, and the osteoblast sits there on the surface waiting for that hole to be, and it starts filling up that hole. If you have osteoporosis, the osteoclast chews away too quickly. So most of the medications we have target the osteoclast to make it work slower so that the osteoblast can start filling up those holes. So most of our treatment options focus on that.
And the side effects to the bisphosphonates?
I think the most general one, if you take the oral bisphosphonates, is upper gastric irritation.
Right.
Then
you can take the infusion as well.
You can take the infusion, which totally bypasses the stomach. It's given once a year. Adherence to therapy by patients much better because they only go for one treatment per year instead of having it taken daily or weekly or monthly. Side effects there, I think doctors need to talk to their patients. The most obvious ones that we know of are the flu-like symptoms, up to 3 to 4 days post-infusion. And then
only up to 3 to 4 days.
Some people have it 7 days, some people have it 2 days.
But it's not for the rest of the year.
No, it shouldn't. No, please, no. No, it shouldn't be. So if you develop symptoms that are like that 3 or 4 months down the line, it's probably not due to the infusion. We also know that it's usually a first dose response. So if you have to have this infusion for 2 to 3 years, it's usually only on the first infusion that you get those side effects.
We're talking postmenopausal women and treatment options for them. Are the treatment options, apart from HRT obviously, the bisphosphonates, is that recommended for the treatment in men with osteoporosis as well?
Absolutely.
And does that also then suggest that, let's assume you're 60 years old or 55 years old, that you'd have to take that treatment for the rest of your life?
You know, I think 55 and 60 years old is actually quite young. So you should not have...
I'm really talking postmenopausal women.
Yeah, you should not have osteoporosis by then. And you need to really up your calcium and vitamin D intake.
But if you do present.
But if you do have it, yes, men can take it too. But you know, men also go through a menopause. I think some of them
andropause.
Yeah, but I think that they're probably born with it sometimes. But they lose hormones much slower than women.
Okay.
But we also know that hypogonadal function or low testosterone levels in men can lead to osteoporosis and fracturing osteoporosis. So hormone replacement therapy for them is also available.
Okay.
So they can have testosterone replacement, like we can have estrogen replacement.
And that would help possibly slow down the osteoporosis process.
If that is a cause of the osteoporosis, absolutely.
Right.
But if they have fracturing osteoporosis, I think a bisphosphonate, a more active bone drug, is necessary. So something like a bisphosphonate would be an option.
Okay, we've almost come to the end of the show and there was still so much to cover, but very quickly, apart from the flu-like symptoms with the bisphosphonates, the infusion obviously, what other side effects should one be looking out for, or are you good to go?
I think that is good to go. There are, if you go and Google the side effects, and I want to shoot Dr. Google sometimes, but if you Google the side effects, you will hear about the osteonecrosis of the jaw and the atypical femoral fractures after bisphosphonates. They look horrific when you look at the pictures. I can only say, and that's what I really want to say, is please, this is such a rare side effect. It happens in 1 in 10,000 people. It needs to be listed, but it is a sensational. The media got hold of this at one stage and really blew down bisphosphonates. I just know that it's one of the most effective treatments that we have in our arsenal of osteoporosis treatments. So please don't go and Google the side effects. You will see all the horrible stuff.
Rather get in touch with
Get in touch with you. Yeah, talk to me or talk to your doctor.
Yeah, Teresa Hoch, CEO of National Osteoporosis Foundation of South Africa, your closing words of comfort to people suffering from osteoporosis.
It's not doom and gloom. There's always, fractures can always be prevented. And if your doctor say it's too late to treat, don't believe him, because it's never too late to treat.
Go for a second opinion.
Yeah.
Thank you for being with us on the show. Stay beautiful. Thank you indeed.
Thank you, Julie.
That was Teresa talking osteoporosis. Remember, it is the silent disease. And please, if you suspect that perhaps you have a family history or you might be presenting with the disease, please have it checked out. Rather arrest the disease in its track. You may not be able to reverse the damage, but at least you're able to arrest further deterioration of bone. And on that note then, time for us to wrap up. Thank you so much for keeping me company on a Saturday morning. It was lovely being with you. Till Wednesday morning at the same time. As always, take care on the roads. A big thank you to the Let's Talk production team. And as always, it is Assalamu alaikum and Khudafiz from me, Julie Ali.